The English Bible. You've probably seen one, right? It's one of the most common books on the planet, tucked away on bookshelves and in hotel nightstands everywhere. But what if I told you that the simple act of putting that book into English was once a crime punishable by death? Yeah, this isn't just some dusty old story about language. It's a gripping and often bloody saga of rebellion, power, and the fight for knowledge.
It sounds just wild, doesn't it? Why would anyone be killed for translating a book? Well, that's the big question we're going to tackle today. And to get to the bottom of it, we have to travel back to a time when words were seen as so powerful, so incredibly dangerous, that to control them was to control, well, everything.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We're in medieval Europe, and the Bible, it's the most important book in the world, absolutely revered. But for almost everyone, it was basically a locked box. Why? Because it was written in a language that nobody actually spoke.
I want you to just let that sink in for a minute. 1,000 years. For a whole millennium, the central text of Western society was completely locked away from the public. If you were a farmer or a blacksmith or even a knight, the words of Scripture were totally off limits to you. You couldn't read them yourself, you just had to take the priest's word for what it said.
And you know, this wasn't an accident. This was all by design. The official version of the Bible was the Latin Vulgate. Church services? All in Latin. The whole spiritual experience was happening in a language that was totally foreign to the people in the pews. And there was a very real fear among the church leaders that if regular folks could read the Bible for themselves, they might, get their own ideas. Ideas that could challenge the church's power. So that language barrier, it was a really effective tool for control.
But here's the thing about control. Sooner or later, someone's going to push back. And in this story, the first major rebel, the first person to really challenge this system, was an English scholar by the name of John Wycliffe.
So, let's look at how this all started to kick off. Way back in the late 1300s. And remember, this is before the printing press, so everything had to be copied by hand. Wycliffe and his followers took on this massive, dangerous job of creating the very first complete Bible in English. This was an absolutely radical move, and it really set the stage for everything that was to come.
Now, it's important to note, Wycliffe was working from the Latin version, so his Bible was a translation of a translation. But even that was considered total heresy. His followers, who were called the Lollards, were hunted down as heretics. They'd meet in secret to read from these hand-copied Bibles, and if you were caught with one, it could literally cost you your life.
All right, now let's jump forward to our next key player. And this guy, he takes things to a whole new level. If John Wycliffe cracked the door open, William Tyndale came along and absolutely blew it off its hinges.
This one quote right here tells you everything you need to know about William Tyndale. The story goes, he was arguing with a high-ranking cleric who said it was better for people not to have the Bible. And Tyndale shot back with this. His goal wasn't just academic. He believed that everyone, down to the boy working a plow in a field, deserved to read the Scripture for themselves.
And Tyndale's plan was nothing short of genius. First, unlike Wycliffe, he learned Greek and Hebrew so he could translate directly from the original source texts for the best possible accuracy. Second, he took advantage of Gutenberg's brand new invention, the printing press, to make lots of small, cheap copies that people could actually afford and hide easily. And third, since this was all completely illegal in England, he had to do it on the run in Europe, smuggling the finished Bibles back home in things like sacks of grain and bales of cloth. It was like a spy operation.
And here we have it, the answer to that question we started with. For the crime of giving the Bible to the people in their own language, William Tyndale was eventually hunted down, betrayed by a friend, tried for heresy, and then publicly strangled and burned at the stake. They say his last words were a prayer, "Lord, open the King of England's eyes." A truly tragic ending. But believe me, his influence was far from over.
And in one of history's greatest ironies, Tyndale's prayer was actually answered just a few short years after his death. The whole political and religious scene in England did a complete 180, and suddenly translating the Bible went from a death penalty crime to a project sponsored by the king himself. So fast forward a few decades. King James I is on the throne, and he wants to end the religious squabbling in his kingdom. His big idea? To create one single, official, authorized version of the English Bible that everyone could use. To do it, he put together an absolute dream team of 47 of the most brilliant scholars in the country. This massive project would become the legendary King James Version, the KJV. But here is the most incredible, mind-blowing twist in this whole story. This new, authorized Bible
the one with the king's official stamp of approval, it wasn't written from scratch, not even close. Modern scholars estimate that over 80% of the New Testament in the King James Bible is lifted, word for word, directly from the translation of the executed heretic William Tyndale. The work that got him killed became the foundation of the most famous Bible in history. It's just, wow.
And you really can't overstate the impact of this book, which is really Tyndale's work polished by King James's men. It didn't just shape religion, it literally shaped the English language we speak today. Think about phrases like the salt of the earth, a law unto themselves, or fight the good fight. We use these all the time without even thinking about it. They are a direct inheritance from this 400-year-old book.
Okay, let's hit the fast-forward button and jump to our modern world. The battle for access, the one Tyndale died for, has been completely won. But a new, much more complicated kind of challenge has popped up in its place. The challenge of overwhelming choice.
So today, translators basically have two main philosophies. On one side, you have formal equivalence. Think of this as a word-for-word approach. It tries to stick as closely as possible to the original Hebrew and Greek grammar and sentence structure. It's very literal, but sometimes it can be a little clunky to read. On the other side is dynamic equivalence, which is more of a thought-for-thought approach. Here, the goal is to capture the meaning of the original phrase and express it in a way that sounds natural and clear to a modern reader. It's a constant tug-of-war between literal precision and simple readability.
And you can really see this difference when you put them side by side. Just take any well-known verse. In the classic, formal KJV, it sounds majestic, poetic. In the popular, more readable NIV, the same idea is there, but the language is much more straightforward. And then you have something like The Message, which is a super contemporary paraphrase, and it sounds like someone talking to you today. They're all trying to get at the same truth, but the voice, the feel, the style, they're worlds apart. We don't have one English Bible anymore. We literally have hundreds.
And that brings us right back to today. We've gone from a world where there was zero access to the Bible in English to a world where you have a dozen different versions right on your phone. From a time when one translation could get you killed to a time of almost infinite choice. And that leaves us with a really interesting final thought. With all these options, has the original meaning of the text become clearer for us? Or, in a weird way, has all this choice just made things more complicated?